is ready to leave the ground, SLS arrives on the grounds of KSC, and this just in, from the grounds of Starbase, Ship 30 is about to get frosty. Roll the intro.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside SC off. Bring in SC off. It's orange!
Orange 25! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Look at this! Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting with the flare, correct?
Yikes. You read? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Welcome everybody to the Flame Trench. You may have seen the flame be lit in Paris, but we're about to light rocket engine flames here, hopefully. I am Sawyer Rosenstein, and I will be your host for today's edition of our weekly show where we get to talk about all of the news that we think is cool and that's interesting. Not always happy, sometimes happy, but we always make fun for all of it. I am joined, of course, by my fantastic team of tremendous tenors. I don't know how they sing, but joining me today, we've got Alex. How's it going, Alex?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. I'm very happy because, finally we have that approval for Falcon 9 to be able to fly again. Hopefully we're going to see it in about 7 hours and 13 minutes, fly again. And, we'll be here just covering that and a lot more, I guess, because there's been so many things going on. You mentioned that on the cold open. I guess we're going to go through lots of things today.
Yeah, who's counting how long until it flies again, right? And also joining us today is Ryan. How's it going, Ryan?
It's going great, Sawyer. I mean, I can't sing, but it's going great. I can't wait to Falcon 9's flying again, and a lot of cool Starship stuff's happening. So can't wait to cover it.
I'm sure you can sing. It's just a question of, do people want to hear people sing? So
yeah.
Also, copyright strikes, they're not good
yeah,
on YouTube.
That too. And I'm sure the operator of today's stream, Jay, would not be too happy if we did that. So Jay will be the one pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, pew-pew-pewing as needed. So we will also have a special guest joining us, hopefully later in the show. But who it's going to be, you'll have to wait and see. We will start, of course, with the news that Falcon 9 is set to fly, as mentioned, just a couple hours from now. Finally, the return to flight following that Stage 2 incident. Alex, what do we know now?
Well, it's been 2 weeks, essentially 2.5 weeks, or 2 weeks, since that failure happened, and we're just back on track. We're gonna get that return to flight again in 7 hours, 11 minutes. I guess we should probably have like a countdown or something. We should do this like countdown to launch. Nah,
Oh,
but
different show.
exactly, that's a different show. We're in the flame trench. But yeah, so just to recap, we had that stage 2 anomaly during the Starlink 9.3 mission all the way back again 2 weeks ago from Vandenberg. SpaceX yesterday released an update on the report. They have essentially completed a report. They have sent that to the FAA. The FAA also says that they have agreed that no public was in danger or at risk during that mission, and so they have approved the public safety determination, and therefore Falcon 9 can return to flight. But coming back to that update from SpaceX, they essentially said that it was all down to a sense line on the MVAC engine. We'll probably talk more in detail about what that means and everything and where it might be. I even have some pictures about that we can maybe talk about later. It all came down to a sense line on the MVAC engine that senses the liquid oxygen pressure on the oxidizer pump of the MVAC engine, sort of like this engine here. It just essentially broke off. There was this sort of clamping system. It came off loose due to the vibration of the engine, and that opened a crack on that line. Liquid oxygen escaped from that line, and unfortunately, that meant when the engine was supposed to relight again after a coast phase, that liquid oxygen. So on this first burn that we saw, we saw that liquid oxygen coming off and everything, and it looked bad, but it did not affect the performance of the MVAC engine. However, during that coast phase afterwards, that cooled down a lot of the components, excessive cool down of the components of the MVAC engine, including the one that supplies that TTEB ignition fluid to relight the engine. That's sort of the important thing. And that meant the engine could not start. Or rather, it did a hard start, that is called, when you just, you try to ignite it, but it doesn't want to ignite because there's something there happening in this case, that, ignition fluid was not flowing properly because of that super cooling, I guess, of those components. So yeah, it was not able to relight. The satellites were lost because they were inserted into a lower orbit than originally planned, and unfortunately, that was lost. So going forward, what they're going to be doing is, in the near term, they're going to be eliminating that sense line, that pressure gauge line that they have for the pump on the oxidizer pump on the MVAC engine. They're going to be eliminating that. They have already tested multiple second stages. We have actually seen this at McGregor, that they have tested multiple second stages, MVAC engines as well, out there at McGregor, ever since pretty much for the last week or so. So of the 2 weeks that it has taken them to return to flight, at least half of that has been testing second stages with, or rather without that sense line, to be able to confirm that they are indeed cleared for flight and they can launch without those. Mostly sure that maybe in the longer term they're going to be thinking about a different way of maybe designing that system. They also said that at least today on the Crew 9 press conference, they talked about them looking over not just the second stages, but other places where similar clamping systems, that system that made that line shake loose with the vibrations of the engine. They thought, well, maybe if there's something similar on Dragon or on Falcon 9 boosters, we probably need to look at that. They have also looked at that as well. This is like the summary. We can get to the details as we go by, and we maybe catch some questions from the audience and everything, where they add NASASpaceflight and everything as usual. But that's sort of the short version of this whole story. So hopefully you can see there as well. One of the clips that we're showing here is a static fire test that also happened this last week. This is for the Starlink 10-4 mission. This is not the one that is going to be returned to flight. We thought it was going to be at first, but it's not going to be. That is the one after. So there's going to be a launch tonight, hopefully, or early tomorrow morning, depending on where you live in the world. And following that, we're going to have another Starlink launch out of the Cape, which is this one that you can see there on your screen, and then another one from Vandenberg as well. So that's sort of the outlook, the near-term outlook for Falcon 9 launches. We're back on track, baby.
Yes, we are. And actually, one of the briefings today, I think it was actually related to Crew 9. One of the SpaceX folks was talking about the fact that, the reason they are able to resolve this as quick as they could is because they fly these things so often. So if you fly them all and they're all built the same way, so if something goes wrong, you have so much data that you can compare it to. And they did state that they were able to get data from this second stage all the way through until basically re-entry. So they got plenty of data from it of everything that was going on, the systems, and that helps them comparing it with this crazy flight flow. So the fact that we have now 3 Falcon 9 launches coming up in about 48 hours combined is about right for SpaceX, I think.
Yeah, and next week we're going to have another 3 launches. So make sure to, tune into our channel and everything, the whole deal, right? We're going to have at least 2 from the Cape. One of them should be the launch of another Starlink, but then the other one will be the launch of the Cygnus NG-21 mission from Sleep 40. That's going to be on the 3rd. So that's going to be exciting because that's going to be probably the first customer mission since the failure. But by then, it's probably going to be like 3-4 Starlink flights already in the bag. So we're going to have some experience already with these new changes. I guess one couple of little things that I should mention here before even going to more details here as well. You mentioned that indeed that MVAC engine failed to restart, but it did not mean the end of the flight. It did not mean the end of the second stage. The satellites were deployed, and the second stage was passivated. That is when they vent down all of the gases that are on board, the helium, the oxygen, they vent also the kerosene as well. They energize the stage, as they call it, and so they essentially make it just passive thing tumbling through space. And that second stage, also, as you mentioned, they had complete data. Like that engine failure did not result in like a big boom or explosion, and they also had contact with those satellites after they deployed. Unfortunately, because they use these Hall effect thrusters, they are very efficient, but unfortunately, they're very low on thrust, and so the atmospheric drag eventually kicked them down back to Earth. And the other thing was, well, I forgot about the other thing, but we can talk about that later. Sorry.
The other thing is
There's so many things in my head. But yeah, it was another. Oh, hang on. Now I got it. It was that the second stage that was flown on that mission, it had a little change on that clamp system that was required by a customer, and apparently that was essentially Steve Stitch was talking about it today on the Crew 9 conference, where it was like, it's sort of how unforgiving spaceflight tends to be, where you change just a little tiny bit and you think, oh, it's going to be fine. We've tested this under X, Y conditions that we've seen already. But then something happens like this, and it's like, well, maybe we should have done maybe more testing or made sure that, there were no side effects to this change. But yeah, it was like a little small change.
Yeah, which that actually goes into a question specifically from Musical Wolves via Super Chat, who said, will all new second stages have any new vibration dampening parts? Do we know any forward-facing plans other than just for now removing that one part and using the already existing sensors?
I don't know. To be fair, they haven't really explained what they're going to be doing. So on the near term, as we were saying, right, they're going to be deleting that from the system. Best part is no part kind of thing. But I'm mostly sure that it is something that they want to keep for, one of the things that they, again, this is a sense line that it's a sensor that just, catches the pressure on the oxidizer pump. And this is interesting because Steve Stitch mentioned that this is something that it is very important for missions where there's a long coast phase and they need to relight again. That is something that they want to have. So I'm mostly sure that perhaps in the near term they don't have it because they don't need it. They don't have that kind of missions where they have a long coast phase, but they might have some of those coming up. He said that it was something that a customer, that change in the sense line was something that a customer had required. So I'm mostly sure that in the future there's going to be some kind of change of design. I'm not sure if it's going to be about dampening though, because that probably adds a lot more mass than just maybe changing the clamping system to a better one that just doesn't fail. But we'll see. Maybe
Yeah.
they'll change it and we won't even know about it. They did this change and we didn't know about it, and then it failed and we knew when it failed. But if it had gone okay and nothing bad had happened, then we may have not known. So
That is true. And I've got two kind of questions here that are asking for a little bit of clarification on it. Nikki D saying, can we focus on how a sensor caused a leak? It doesn't make sense how a faulty sensor leads to a LOX leak.
yeah, that is a great question. So it is not the sensor itself, it is a sense line. So if you imagine trying to sort of like take a reading on the pressure on your tires on your car, you need this sort of like thing that attaches and goes to the tire, so that it sips a little bit of that air from the tire, and then that goes through, like a gauge kind of thing, and you read it there, and you're like, okay, it's whatever bars. I don't really do readings of tire pressure or anything, so I don't really remember that. But you can essentially use that is the sense line kind of thing. That is sort of the analogy here, where you need like a pipe that goes into your pump and sort of extracts a little bit of that liquid oxygen, runs it through that sensor, that pressure sensor, and that's a sense line. So it's essentially, it senses that pressure from the oxidizer pump, and that is essentially the same kind of thing as when you're trying to get a reading on your tire pressure. Kind of need a way to get that air. It's not like you can just touch the tire and be like, okay, it is about 3 bar or something like. You don't do it mentally. You need a way to actually, catch that air. The same thing with the liquid oxygen. So that means that if it breaks at some point in that line, then you essentially have a leak of that liquid oxygen outside of the engine. And so this is what happened eventually. It cracked open, and it just let that liquid oxygen escape the engine. Again, it did not affect the initial burn, the performance of that engine during that initial burn. But of course, if it keeps leaking, as we were mentioning, it cools down a lot of the components that shouldn't be cooled down. It fails on the relight.
And then, speaking of things that got cooled down, another question from Demian is saying, how could excessive cooling of the TTEB ignition system lead to the hard start of the engine? Hi, Jake.
What was the question again?
Was how could excessive cooling of the TTEB ignition system lead to that hard start of the second stage engine?
Well, you can think about it two ways. Either it cooled down enough that it wasn't flowing properly through the line, or even it cooled down to the point of just solidifying, right? Like just turning into a frozen blob inside of the line, and then it doesn't flow to the engine. So either way, whatever happens, either if it just cools down enough that the viscosity just increases on that T-tip, and when it flows through the line, it doesn't flow at the rate that you want, because now there's like a different viscosity, a different flow of that T-tip through the line, and therefore it doesn't get to the engine. It's not just the main combustion chamber, but it also needs to go to the gas generator and everything. So it needs to get to these locations at the correct flows at the correct times. And if it doesn't happen, the engine does not ignite, or it ignites very explosively. That tends to happen sometimes when you have a hard start. In this case, I can imagine that if it didn't blow up, at the very least, it probably just, it's sort of like when you're trying to turn on the contact on your engine, and it's like, and it tries to, and it just can't, right? Like on a very cold morning or something like that. But it's pretty much that same analogy there, where things need to flow in the times and rates that they need to.
Yeah, if they freeze up, you can run into issues. Hard start, all of a sudden you start breaking things, and that's not good for mechanical stuff. It's not. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, says the mechanic. That would explain it.
Yeah, he works on planes, so he knows more about that than me. I just put the example of like a frozen morning with your car and trying to turn it on, because it's probably very similar.
like if
doesn't want to light.
If it's really cold outside when we go to start turbofan engines, so say it's -10, -20 out, or even 0 degrees, and this is even Fahrenheit or Celsius. You go start that up, your oil is kind of like sludge. It's not really sludge, but it's not really, viscosity is not great. So your engine takes a while to start, and then you have to let the jet engine sit at idle for a little bit to basically let the fuel heat up and let the oil heat up, so that once it's above 0°C, like you get to like 5, maybe 10 to 0°C, then you can start applying power. If you apply power too soon, well, then you're accelerating the engine with oil that's not heated up, and you could destroy the bearings on the inside of the engine, and then you shell the engine entirely, and you have to change the engine. So it's one of those things. Is when if something gets too cold, it's usually not good for it, kind of thing. So, and I'm kind of curious as to if they didn't need that sense line at all to begin with. Maybe it's something from the past that they've just kept on the engine, and they just decided not to remove it, and maybe now it's like, well, maybe we actually don't need it or something along those lines, because usually sense lines are relatively important. They allow a valve to understand when to open or close, or whether or not a pump or something needs to speed up or slow down. So it's kind of curious that they're just able to delete it. So
That is,
Yeah.
yeah. What were you gonna say, Alex?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's actually, I have that sort of theory based on what Steve Stitch was saying today on the Crew 9 conference, that it's probably more related and more important when they have these long coasts. And it's not every single mission that they do that. Even Starlink missions, they do a coast phase, but it's like 30 minutes. And other missions, such as, for example, the Turksat 6A mission, GTO missions, essentially, those have a coast phase, but it's like maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes. CRS missions, crew missions, they don't have any coast phase. They just insert directly with one burn and they deploy. And so, for those kinds of missions, they can just fly probably without the sensor. Now, there's one picture that I wanted to talk about. Maybe Jay can show it here quickly. It's like, there we go. That is the picture. You can see there the difference between regular Merlin on the left and MVAC engine on the right. You see they are not the same engines. So if you look at the MVAC engine, the one on the right, there's like two big tubes that sort of come from above. There's like the circle, the black circle at the top. That is the connection to the second stage. I think it's called a thrust cone or something like that. You can even see the sort of canisters of T-TEM and everything. But the two big tubes that you see, sort of, one it's coming from the side and the other is coming from the other side. The one coming from the left, that is the one for liquid oxygen, and the other one coming from the right, that is for the fuel. And so they come into that gas generator. The gas generator drives the turbine that essentially drives up the pressure on those two propellants, and then it's injected on the main combustion chamber for the Merlin engine, and then the gas generator exhaust just comes out of that. There's that sort of torus shape, donut shape kind of thing that just has that film cooling for the nozzle extension. So it's that big pipe there that goes into the gas generator and the turbine, essentially into the pump, that has that sense line. Just to give you an idea, that mess of pipes and everything, somewhere in there, that's where that line is. And I wanted to show this today precisely because it's like, just to give you an idea of how a mess of cabling and wires and plumbing and everything is they are very jumbled up and everything. So yeah, it's very complicated to nail down everything to just that, and say, oh yeah, it's some clamp system, whatever, that we have here to be able to secure the line that came loose, and the line just shake off and got broken and whatever. That is very important. This is also another thing that I was gonna mention as well. Some people talked about the thing that flapped in front of the camera. There's things flapping in front of the booster camera every single time. There's always some kind of debris that shakes loose. The whole MVAC engine will be inside of the intrastage. The only way for that thing to get into the booster camera, which is like the other way and pointing down, it needs to be like this way from inside of Like there's such a way. Yeah, there you go. Like there's such a way from being somewhere around here, right, to the base of the. It just doesn't make sense for that to be that sense line at all. And there's like also this whole insulation thing that you can see here protecting the engine as well. In fact, the first sign that we knew things were going wrong for the engine was that this insulation just expanded, probably because the oxidizer leak just started and it expanded and everything. But yeah, that's essentially the other two things that I wanted to cover here. It's very unlikely for that to be the case. And that engine.
It's cool seeing that, actually, with the real pictures of the inner workings on it. So thank you for explaining that and bringing that one up, too. One more question here from Flawed Perspective that I want to hit. And they're asking, what about Polaris Dawn? Well, they actually mentioned that today in the briefings. They were talking about kind of the order of things. They mentioned that right now we've got Starliner still at the station, which update, still no exact date of return yet. They're going to do some test firings of the thrusters and different pulses while still docked. And then everything else from that will be automated, no more hand flying. But that has one docking port. Crew 8 has another docking port. And I know Polaris Dawn isn't using a docking port, but they want to get all of that shuffling at the ISS figured out first before launching Polaris Dawn. So NASA's basically saying, hey, we want Crew 9 next. So Crew 9 will launch sometime in the next couple of weeks,
18th,
hopefully.
They mentioned a potential target date could be August 18th, they said. So we'll see.
And then Polaris Dawn, they said end of summer, which we're already kind of at. So that could be any time from April 19th, I guess, then through September.
August. So they
August 19th. Wow,
okay.
I'm already.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Spring has sprung early, apparently.
No, but yeah, you're right. It's probably gonna be somewhere. It's very likely that they'll launch Crew 9 and then whatever time it takes them for turning around 39A, that's probably gonna be when Polaris Dawn flies. Like maybe the 25th or something like that. We'll see.
Yeah, I would speculate probably first week of September we see it.
Yeah, I mean, if it is, I'm gonna do a spoiler here. I'm coming back to the US. I may be able to watch that launch.
Ooh,
if it is
nice.
on the first week of September. So yeah, I want to see Starship launch, so that's why I'm coming back.
I don't blame you.
Whenever that happens, whenever Flight 5 is supposed to happen at this rate.
Speaking of Flight 5.
Yeah, speaking of
just gonna
Flight
say.
5.
Yeah, we've got action going on right now over at Starbase. And Ship 30 is starting to get a little frosty, I understand. What have we seen so far?
Well,
Ryan, what have we seen?
Well, right now they're currently loading liquid oxygen and methane on board Ship 30 to get it ready to possibly perform a static fire. They need to do this because they swapped out one of the RVAC engines. I think it was 378 for 390. And this was right around the time of Flight 4. So they just got to test this engine. When they did this back on Ship 28, they did only do a spin prime. However, they have a new pad with an actual flame trench and an actual water deluge. So
you said the name.
Yeah, flame trench on the flame trench. But anyways,
Yay.
so it'll be a lot better against the ship. It'll also help them kind of test this new heat shield, how it will fare up against the static fire. But this won't produce nearly as many vibrations because they're not firing against a concrete pad. They're firing against a ton of water into a trench. So it shouldn't have nearly as much of a bad effect on the vehicle at all. So they're going to go ahead and do that. And then I guess we already have road closures anyways for it to roll back once it's done. So yeah.
There we go. Yeah, and also we're getting word that Falcon 9 is now going vertical at 39A, which is good for tonight's launch attack.
That's nice.
So I want to hit some support here. We've gotten a lot of memberships. Wow. Including even before the stream started. Escogriff Gaming, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. J-Bone, thank you for becoming a Padrat member. Alf Buddha, thank you for becoming a Padrat member. Reina, thank you for becoming a Padrat member as well. Adam, also becoming a Padrat member. Lars, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Merry Old Elf, thank you as well for gifting one of those memberships. And Telstar86, a name we see here often, gifting. Jay, you're going to have to let me know when you're good to go with the sound effect for our next level support. Ninja Decimator. Gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you as always. Apocalypse Cow, also gifting 5 Red Team memberships. That's Danger Moo, I believe. And RC Horseman, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships as well. Holy Toledo, Ohio. I mean, talk about being able to do some crazy things with all of the support. It gives people that might not have a chance the ability to take a look at some of the awesome photos and videos that are member exclusive, get those emotes, and the money that is used also comes to help allow us to provide you with some really cool things, including one coming up in 2 minutes. So set your watches. And Master Toymaker saying, chat is asking about an NSF Jake patch. Make it happen, please. I think his title card should just say, owner of Sawyer, because I think he's more popular than me.
Yeah.
I mean, you do know that when you have a cat, you don't own the cat owns you. So.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Very much so.
You are its servant. That's how it goes.
Well, while we're talking about launches at 39A and over at Kennedy Space Center side at least, let's head over and talk about the Space Launch System, SLS, as the core stage finally made its arrival debut to NASA's Kennedy Space Center ahead of the first Artemis flight with crew on board. And this thing it's massive. If you've never seen it, it is quite large. And we had our team out there as they were rolling the booster out of the Pegasus barge, the turn basin. You could see, just again, I don't know how else to explain it. I love the beautiful orange foam on it, the Sophie. It's probably just the shuttle guy in me.
Tan, though. It's very yellowish.
Well, yellowish, which, I mean, that's the thing. And we were talking about that on the live stream that we did when it was rolling out. The fact that it's orange-ish, but then the more it sits out in the sun, the more orange it gets, the darker.
It gets a sunburn.
Yeah, it legitimately gets a sunburn.
Yeah, it gets a sunburn.
I'm starting to peel from my US trip.
Yeah, Alex is about to no longer be orange. Oh, yeah. But, I mean, our team out there got some gorgeous shots. If you haven't seen them, definitely worth taking a look at. I know that there's always concerns about, well, it's a lot of money. It is. It's, a little over budget by a lot. But we're sending humans back to the moon. That's at least pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I guess I'll take it, right? We're sending people back to the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll take it, huh?
I'll take it.
Doesn't sound super optimistic.
I mean, it's one of the other things. It's like there's not a lot of other, I mean, right now we don't have any other options other than Starship, and Starship's still a ways away from doing the full thing by itself. I mean, they're only on their 5th flight. They're just introducing another block vehicle, which we can cover later or whatnot. But like, it's still a ways away, and there's SLS now, and it's what we have. I mean, it's what we have to get there. It's the kind of whole thing. So I won't complain. We're going back to the moon and possibly farther, so I'm not going to complain about it right now. As much it is,
that's a good point.
As much as it is incredibly expensive, but it is space, so space isn't cheap, space isn't easy.
That is true. It is not cheap. It is not easy. And boy, does it remind me of the shuttle program, still seeing it. Like, not just the orange foam, the fact you've got the 4 RS-25 engines on the back. These are actual shuttle engines we're talking about here. Eventually they'll build one specifically for Artemis and SLS. But these are actual shuttle RS-25 engines. It's a shame to see them thrown away into the ocean, even though they're reusable. But, you know, they should be somewhere in a museum. I'm telling you. They should take these RS-25s and put them in a museum. Am I right, EJ?
Yeah. Hey, Chris B. Are you jealous? Are you jealous? I think you might be. I think we might have one in a museum, Sawyer. I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
I would think so. EJ,
Yeah, no, maybe. Well, we're in front of an
Space
RS-25
Museum.
engine here. This one could be a space shuttle main engine. We don't know for sure. I'd have to go kind of like peep on it, but I'm pretty sure they get mad at me if I go past the stanchions. So, yeah, we're actually out here at the Intrepid Sea and Space Museum, and this is why I wasn't on Flame Trench this week. This is why, because, I mean, I like you guys out in YouTube chat, but also, you know, if I'm gonna be next to a rocket engine or be on Flame Trench, I'm choosing rocket engine. But today, guess what? We don't have to choose. We can do both of those things. So check this out. Right up next to it, it's a big mother, huh? It's a big engine. It's a lot bigger than you think it is. Look at that thing. I like to think of myself as a pretty stout individual, but also there's 3 of these things on the shuttle and 4 on SLS. We got 4 of these bad boys. 4 of these bad boys that rolled in on core stage 2, as Sawyer was saying. Now, once again, what makes me think that this might be a shuttle engine, maybe a Block 1 or an older shuttle engine, is because, well, it's here. Because the Block 2 SSMEs are the ones that became the RS-25D that's currently on the core stage that was rolled into the VAB, which is actually pretty rad. This engine right here is a hydrogen and oxygen fuel-rich stage combustion cycle, so it's kind of doing half of what Raptor does. But keep in mind, it's been doing half of what Raptor does for probably, well, since the mid-70s, something like that. If it looks complicated, yeah, I would say yes. This is pretty complicated here. We're actually looking at, I'm not sure which side this is, but this thing has a low pressure oxidizer turbo pump that feeds a high pressure oxidizer turbo pump, and then a high pressure fuel turbo pump that feeds, or a low pressure fuel turbo pump that feeds a high pressure fuel turbo pump. It's actually a pretty dang complicated system here, but that's what they needed to do to stage that hydrogen to get the performance that they needed with the shuttle. This engine is almost something that you could use to make an SSTO, almost. I mean, the shuttle's stage and a half, right? And so is SLS for what it's worth. But as you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on with this thing. Those are pneumatic actuators from on this block, all these steel lines that aren't kind of bendy, that kind of go straight. Those are all pneumatic actuators. The other ones with the flex joints on them are the ones that take the cryogenic propellants, or the ones that take the cold propellants. The reason why is because they got a flex joint on them, because to take the cold temperatures that's going to be encountered. Now, once again, I was talking about comparing this to a Raptor engine a little bit earlier. A Raptor engine is methane. It's methane and liquid oxygen. This is hydrogen and liquid oxygen, a little bit different. You're swapping a little bit of performance there with methane for a lot more energy. These engines are insanely efficient. Raptor is close to this efficiency, but it can't stunt on these old school shuttle engines. They're still pretty good. If not a little bit complicated. Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm really excited. This is pretty awesome seeing this right here. Once again, I think this is an older one. It's still got, for the nerds, this one's still got Rockwell International stickers on it, so it might be a little bit on the older side. But either way, a magnificent piece of equipment. Anyway, I'm going to pipe it back over. Sawyer, if you're out there, there is at least one in a museum that we know about. Maybe we'll see future flame trenches, maybe on location at other museums with other shuttle motors in them. I don't know. We're going to have to do that in the future. But back to you. Also, the weather's real nice. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, EJ, for the weather report and the RS-25 report. And yeah, as soon as you mentioned the sticker for like, the Geeks and Nerds out there, yeah, that definitely dates it as an older one. So thank you, EJ. And we are not done with the Intrepid Sea Air and Space Museum. In fact, immediately following Flame Trench tonight, we have a museum show. And while we're talking about SLS, it happens to have a special guest with Das and Charlie Blackwell Thompson, who was the launch director for the Artemis 1 mission. So, stay tuned for that. More coming from the Intrepid tonight, more space goodness, and EJ, we will see you back in the studio at some point. Stop having too much fun out there. All right. I feel like at this point, I guess we kind of have to hit some of the actual questions regarding SLS and the rollout and things like that itself. You know, we still try to pretend to be a news show. If you want the real, actual news, that's what Twist is for, This Week in Spaceflight, which also comes out earlier in the day on Fridays. But we'll still hit some of
The
the
writers are a good guy. They should probably,
I wonder who they are. I
raise
don't
their
know.
raise their
Yeah,
pay or something.
I don't know who they are.
Rise.
Yeah.
No idea.
No idea. Nope.
Oh boy. All right. Let's see. I saw the question, but I got too involved staring at EJ's motor. Boy, that
Also-
sounds wrong when I say it like that.
If people are like, if you see me that I'm looking down, it's because I have SPL with. Hang on, where here?
Yeah, like if you see me looking to
Okay.
the side, it's because I'm watching Ship 30 right now.
Exactly. I
trying
have
to
here
pay attention
chat.
to it.
I have our thing here for the live stream, and I'm looking at Chip 30 do its thing. We'll obviously go to that once we get closer to more of the action. We're still waiting for engine chill to happen, which I
Yeah.
believe it has not happened.
Should be relatively soon though.
Yeah, it should be soon.
Right. I did see the question of, here we go. Musical Wolves asking, does the core stage have a NASA logo? Which, no, it does not. I don't know if we're able to pull up any of the pictures or
Just
video
a-
that Dee and Max took. But,
It's just the solids, right? That have it on it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on the solids.
and
Well,
I
and
believe the adapter.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the one for Orion. Yeah,
Yeah. Is that the adapter or is that actually on the IUS?
it's on the
Is that the
it's in
fairing?
between the well, there's on the fairing that covers the European service module, but also the connection. The European service module is like lower diameter than the capsule, so
Mhm.
there's like this sort of adapter, and that adapter also has the NASA worm and meatball logos.
SLS
on-
is just
And also on the solid boosters on Artemis 1, they were actually like, if this is the side that faces outward from the rocket, it was right there in the middle. That's where the systems tunnel is for FTS, cabling, all that stuff. So instead of doing it there, it's like a little bit more to the side. It's not right on the side of the SRB. It's actually a little bit more inwards.
Yeah, so it's not a giant bump going through the middle of the word NASA.
Yeah.
As long as they don't do it as bad as Arianespace with their stickering with the two solids. Ugh. Still bitter about that. And Phil933 asking, when do you think we'll see a wet dress rehearsal for SLS? What do you think timeline-wise? Because I know the launch date is just generic 2025, but I want both of your opinions, and I'll start with you, Ryan. When do you think we see wet dress, and when do you think we see launch?
because if I remember correctly from Philip, the pending Orion timelines, because right now that is the holdup for Artemis 2. I think stacking, they wanted to do it. They wanted to stack in like 2 months. Or something. I think it was somewhere around there, 2 maybe 3 months. Let's say they hold to that. Let's say they do stack the core stage plus the SRBs in like 2 months. And they say they want to target early 20. I think it was. I'm trying to remember exactly when they're targeting because it changes so often. It could be maybe end of year. I maybe. because I know they still have to like with the rocket on pad, they still have to do some testing with crew systems and whatnot, especially with the crew access arm and stuff like that, since they're actually carrying crew on this one. They wanna go through all that testing. Maybe end of year, early next year. I think. It maybe, but if it really does get pushed till like, because net's what, September 2025. Actually, maybe more like Q2, late Q2. It could be, and then roll it back, do FTS install, and then roll it back out again. Unless they want to do a wet dress before they launch. Yeah, there's a lot. It's really hard to predict as long of a timeline as it is with something like SLS. Just because there's so many delays and there's so many open-ended items right now, it's kind of hard to predict when it might happen.
Yeah,
and there's the VAB eating the orange popsicle, by the way. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like a big corn dog. Let's be honest.
Ooh, now I'm
With
hungry for corn
engines.
dog.
But yeah, the thing with the wet dress, it also probably comes down to when Orion will be ready. Because I'm mostly sure that they're gonna be doing it with Orion on top, and if Orion is not ready, then
Do it.
they'll probably have to wait for that. And right now, so for Artemis 1, the long pole was that core stage getting ready to fly. Orion was mostly ready to fly. The solid rocket boosters were ready to fly. The launch pad was also ready to fly. The big pole for Artemis 1 was that core stage. For Artemis 2, though, the solid rocket boosters and the core stage are all ready to go. The in-ramp cryogenic propulsion stage, that upper stage, was also ready for Artemis 1. It's also ready for Artemis 2. It's even ready already for Artemis 3. It's in storage somewhere at KSC. And so right now, the long pole for that is the Orion capsule. You know, the whole deal with the heat shield. We've talked about that many, many times in the past. So we'll see what happens. I'm thinking that, it's probably going to be like a few months before the actual flight happens. Like, we're going to see that whenever the flight happens, like count backwards a couple of months, maybe. And that's probably when the wet dress will happen. I'm not too sure, though, that either wet dress and launch might happen next year. There's a good chance it delays to 2026. But
Yeah, that's the other thing. It all depends on Orion, and maybe they figure out Orion quickly. The likelihood of that, though, is when is NASA ever quicker than they even predict? Almost never. So yeah, it could easily, the whole Artemis 2 could easily push till Q1 of 2026, which means a wet dress wouldn't happen until end of next year. I mean, and it's just, man, what, five? That would have been 5 years between flights, or 5. Like, it's just, that's a lot for a rocket that you're supposed to be flying every year to get back to the moon. But,
one of my criticisms, so to speak, with the Artemis program is you cannot establish a regular one launch a year cadence if all of your missions are test missions. In some shape or form, you have to go like Artemis 8 or something like that until you find a mission where nothing new is being tested and like everything is already flight proven and well, already gone through multiple flights and well tested and certified and everything. It's like this sort of there's actually a meme that it's like, oops, it's all flight tests, right? It's like it's pretty much like that. With Artemis 1 was a test of both Orion and SLS. Artemis 2 will be of both SLS and Orion with crew on board. Artemis 3, we're gonna have HLS, the new spacesuits. Artemis 4 will be an improved version of the SLS Block 1B with a new upper stage. We're also going to have a new advanced version of the HLS lander. Artemis 5 will have the second lunar lander. That's going to be Blue Origin. Artemis 6 and 7, I think they're going to be bringing up also modules or something like that, like Gateway will also be brought in as well in some of these missions. So it's going to be all pending of all the things. There's going to be a lot of long polls for a long time in these sort of campaigns. And so that one launch a year cadence, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I've been very critical about that. Like, sure, it's good to build new things and get new systems and not just stick with the same old same every single time that you launch. But it's not. I don't think it's not going to happen.
Like, when is the Bull boosters, the BOLE boosters, supposed to be like put into service? Because like once those have flown like twice, like I would say once those flown at least twice, then you've got your full operational Block 2 SLS. You've kind of worked out kinks. Like, isn't that like? I'm trying to remember what Artemis that would be once those have flown a few times. I can't remember off the top of my head, because if you talk like, oh, Artemis 8 will be like the last like true test flight or something like that, then I have it in my head, it's like, all right, Starship Flight 8 at this rate. So you have two like Starship
Next
Block 1s.
spring.
You have two, yeah, that'll be literally next year. It'll be next year. Like, you have 2 Block 1s left. That'll get you flights 5 and 6. And then that'll be your second Block 2, which at this rate would be like Ship 34. So SpaceX, like that's going to be a pretty well refined rocket by then, even for Starship Super Heavy, considering the amount of stuff that they've learned with it and how much more advanced Block 2 is, which we'll cover here in a minute. But like it's I mean, you look at SLS and you look at Starship, it's kind of funny what Flight 8 will look like. Like, Flight 8, man, Flight 8 is Starship. That's next year. It's kind of ridiculous considering Flight 8 of SLS is what, like 6 years, 6, 7, 8, 9 years down the road? Is that like Flight 8's what, in the 2030s at this rate? It has to be. Like,
Yeah.
it's mid 2030s.
I have my own timeline prediction, which is Artemis 3 will probably be 2028. Artemis 4 will likely be 2030. And Artemis 5 will probably going to be 2032. Maybe one launch every 2 years, every year and a half, maybe. But yeah, I don't see a really high cadence. I think something like Artemis 8 will probably be like 2036, 2037.
And that's with getting rid of basically the idea of a cargo variant at this rate.
Yeah.
There's no way they're going to launch cargo if they can't even get their once yearly crew mission off.
Like, if they could if they could fly once a year, then sure, they could definitely do cargo runs to Moon, Mars, or do things like Europa Clipper and things like that. But if you can't get the cadence to build the rocket, well, you can't even, at this rate, you can't even get enough rockets to do your crewed missions. They're barely enough to do your crewed missions. So how are you going to do cargo? And then, of course, everyone falls back on the default. Well, why would you do SLS cargo when you've got Starship? It's fully reusable. It can do more than SLS. In theory, it can do more than SLS with refueling runs. So why would you even use it? So.
All right. Yeah. It's... At least we have hardware. Let's just start.
Yeah.
We will, of course, be continuing to follow the SLS program, getting those boosters stacked, getting the core stage on it whenever Orion is done and ready to roll. So keep tuned to NSF, and we will keep an eye on that. Of course, we have our Space Coast Live 24/7 cameras keeping an eye on everything going on, including when that rolled in and out. Wilbo Baggins, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Anon Emus, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Chuck Winters, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Ironclad, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. And then Wilbo Baggins, I just can't get enough. Now I have the song stuck in my head. Thank you. And then that diabetic kid. Did anyone see that SpaceX is going to move Dragon splashdowns to the West Coast? Yes. That was an announcement that was made today, that because of incidents where pieces of the trunk survived re-entry and ended up over land. They are now going to move it out to the west coast. A secondary reason also being that the weather's better, supposedly, out there for landing. Obviously, you might not see the landing then because fog, but, East Coast, West Coast still, right?
Yeah, it is actually something that we kinda already knew. If you kept attention to NSF's feeds on social media, Gavin Cornwell, our own boat guy, so to speak, he saw job openings for Long Beach in California on the West Coast all the way back in May for Dragon recovery. And so they were like, Dragon recovery from the West Coast, that's not being a thing since 2020, right? So yeah, it already pointed that perhaps dragons were going to be coming back again to the West Coast. It's not going to be for Crew 9 though. There's still some paperwork and analysis that they need to go through, but in the near future that'll be a thing. Yeah, we're gonna miss though. I'm gonna miss at least those videos of people looking up those night reentries and
Yeah.
seeing the trail of the Crew Dragon flying across the United States or even Canada or Mexico or something like that.
I got to go out and see one more then, because its potential will be Crew 9 will be Florida. Crew 10, they'll have assets likely on both coasts because they have to start moving everything through the Panama Canal. And then from there, it'll all go to the West Coast. But
yeah,
we all know
there was one particular reentry that we actually captured for our Starbase Live cameras because it passed right next to Starbase.
Yes, exactly. And as much as we debate East Coast, West Coast, which it is, versus West Coast, Worst Coast, we can all agree that the Gulf Coast, where Starbase is the best for seeing static fires of Ship 30, which is where we're going to head over to now as we get ready to see how things are going over there. We know that the engine chill started just about 5 minutes ago or so. Where are we at here? To my awesome Starbase team here.
Well, based off of timings from Ship 26, and so far, and especially with engine chill, we're probably looking at around 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes from now. We could see whatever engine test they have to do, which with this kind of LOX load, I'm assuming a static fire. So, yeah, it's going to be fun to watch this thing in action again.
Yeah, I'm looking at SBL very carefully, looking at all the indicators. It looks like maybe liquid oxygen load may be about to finish because of the level of frost that I can see on the vehicle. Yeah, and they started engine chill about 10 minutes ago or so, which usually it takes about 25 to 30 minutes from engine chill to the test happening, whatever test they may do. But as you were mentioning, because of the level of that liquid oxygen, there you can see that feed. So that level is high up enough that it's probably going to be a static fire test. We're going to see it. We're going to obviously cover that as we approach that test, hopefully in the next 20 minutes or so, like at least within 20 minutes.
Yeah,
That's what it would seem.
that venting you see right there, that's where the methane subcoolers are. So they are definitely loading methane on board. So
Yep.
And it looks like kind of the same amount of fuel load that we've seen previously, right? With the amount of frost.
even going back to the suborbital site, basically is about the same. So we should hopefully see we might see a decent line of methane load. It really depends on how many engines they want to fire. Maybe they do all 6 just because, or they just do the center and the RVAC that are tied together to just static fire those rather than all 6. So they may only do 2.
Yeah.
And this is...
Oh,
sorry, I was just going to ask. This is its first static fire with the new tile application method, right?
Well, it's not really a new application method. So a lot what they did is they took all the tiles off. They applied a ablative material to a lot of the center parts of the tanks for on the windward side. So up through the nose cone and places on the tanks, the weld lines aren't covered with the new ablative. They basically, and it doesn't go all the way out to the edge either. So they applied that ablative on, then they put the felt back on plus the mesh, and then their newer tiles, which as far as we can tell, there's nothing different. So it's probably just material composition different on that stuff, but yeah, it's a new heat shield setup. Basically, they added a secondary heat shield to the flaps and a good chunk of the tanks. So and the nose cone. The tip is still the same, and then there's a lot of different places where they have a lot of new gap filler in. So I guess a lot of the issues back for Ship 29 was that there was a lot of gaps in places where where the plasma was getting in, and basically they got in and started to heat up the ship, and they don't want that anymore. Obviously, you don't really want that. It's not good. So they're putting in a new gap filler on a lot of places. And the other thing you can tell too is there's a lot of little tiles in and around places that look to have gap filler where others don't. It looks like when SpaceX was taking off some of those tiles, they may have damaged the pins. So I think there are glued tiles where there would be pin tiles, but the pins are damaged and they didn't fix them, so they just glued them and put in gap filler. So is what it looks like they did on some of them. And Ship 31 should be getting the same treatment. They rolled it back into high bay, although it's not at the tiling station, it's back in the corner. So I really don't know what their plan is. Maybe they're waiting for Ship 30 to go through and have a just maybe they're waiting to see how Ship 30 fares before they do anything more to 31. So
Alex, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, the usual indicators that we take for knowing when a test is gonna happen. Obviously, we have only had one test out of here, which was Ship 26. Um, but assuming that things have been kept constant. So, for example, for the suborbital stand, when they had that, the normal timeline from frost appearing on the vehicle to the test happening, it was usually around 72 to 75 minutes. However, at Massey's, the tank farm is a little bit more improved, and so they were able to do it around 60 minutes when it happened with Ship 26. And it turns out that the frost on Ship 30 appeared at around 4:20 p.m. Central. So that's why we're thinking like maybe around 5:20. Again, this is like something that you maybe have to add, or like plus minus 5 minutes essentially, right? It's like a bit of an estimate. As we get more testing out of masses, we're gonna be able to gather more information, more points of data there for our spreadsheets and everything to be able to say when tests may happen. I think within 5 minutes is a good approximation. We just need to keep looking. When we see fire, then hooray! There's a test, right? Like that's the only way that we can. It's not like on the suborbital pad. On the suborbital pad, you could see the hose that they sprayed water, right before a test happened. Here, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side of the flame trench you are,
Ah.
then then it's a good thing that we don't see the water, because there's an actual flame trench, right? And it all falls down there, and there's no another benefit also. We were talking about the heat shield, right? Another benefit of that flame trench is that instead of being like a flat surface, I was gonna say flat surface, wait, and I just said plate. Instead of being yeah, instead of being a flat surface, you can add that like to the description of the live stream or something. So instead of being a flat surface that can just reflect all of the energy from those engines up to the vehicle, and that shakes loose some of those tiles. Instead, you have that flame trench that sound energy just goes through and gets dissipated also by that water that is within the flame trench. So it helps a lot that it is not like the suborbital pads. The suborbital pads were not good on those tiles. I wouldn't be surprised though if there's still some tiles falling off for two reasons. The first one, as we were mentioning, this was a complete overhaul. This is the first time that they have added this new material, and some tiles, as Ryan was mentioning, they may have damaged some pins here and there, so they're glued instead. And there's things that are not supposed to be like they were before, so it's kind of new in some sense, right? It's gonna be new data after all. That's one side, but the other thing is also it's still clamped down to the stand, and that also means, just like a string on a guitar, depending on how you tap it, right, and then you sort of let it vibrate, it'll give different frequencies and everything, different sounds. The same thing happens with an object that is just clamped to a stand, and now you fire the engines, the whole thing vibrates. It'll vibrate different than when it's in free flight. It is not attached to anything. It is just flying off and dissipating everything in a different way. It's going to be different frequencies, different vibrations. So it's not going to be representative of anything that it's going to experience during flight.
Yeah. I mean, it's still that flat surface, it will help with the test. But, oh, hi, Jake. Not the best time as we continue to watch for this. But there are some good questions coming in. So I do want to make sure we answer some of those. Rankly, Ryan, I'll give this one to you, is asking, how close to the highway is the static fire stand, and do they do a road closure?
It's about a mile, a little bit less than a mile, when you go up Massey's Road, and then they do a road closure. They close the Massey's Road that goes to Massey's, but highway is not closed, so it kind of prevents them from having to shut down the highway to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, part of the benefits of the new stand.
Yeah, because that means that's good, because then people can go to the beach. There are no road closures, no beach closures. People can go freely whenever they want, and there's been some complaints about that. So the less nuisance from that, the better. Yeah, nowadays the only times that you can think of the beach closing is if they test something at the launch site, which it's only like maybe spin primes or static fires of boosters, and obviously for launch. And other than that, there's not really a lot more.
Well, apparently, since earlier I thought it was April, then spring break at the beach, bruh.
Hey, it's summer, right? It's beach time.
It is, yes. Just be careful what cars you drive on said beach. Not that any of our crew has ever gotten stuck in it. Never.
You gotta say that to D, not me. Maybe you can say that to me in about a month and a half.
It was... I didn't name names. So
I don't intend to drive on the beach, though.
All right, Jake. Of course, Jake the cat trying to upstage here. Here's one from Torsten. Did the nitrogen vent over the hippos for methane stop if they take the nitrogen for water deluge?
Take the nitrogen from water deluge? The water deluge system is entirely separate. It's over. You can't really see it in any of these shots. The water deluge system is, well, in this shot is to the left of those large vertical, well, not large, those vertical methane tanks right there. It's a system that continually builds pressure using basically heat exchangers until it's built up, and then it kind of just pushes that pressure out, and that's basically what it is. It doesn't, as far as I remember, I haven't seen anything that it takes nitrogen from the other side of Massey's, where you're using it from that. And another thing to note about this pad, as far as I've seen, there's no way for SpaceX to load nitrogen through this stand. So they can only load methane and oxygen. And I mean, well, why would you need to load nitrogen on a static fire stand? If they want to do a proof test, they can just use the proof test stand that they have. So, yeah.
Unless they're talking about like the FireX system.
So I mean, well, FireX and this thing doesn't have that.
Yeah.
And plus FireX is what's inside the OLM ring, not the DSS. So there's obviously two different systems there. But anyways, this is an entirely different setup than the OLM or anything along those lines. So it's an actual trench with a deflector bucket basically that has a bunch of holes in it to spray out the water, and it hits the deflector and goes out and through the trench. So it's directed away from any infrastructure, it's directed away from the rockets, directed away from everything. So yeah, it's a completely different system than what SpaceX has anywhere at Starbase, but it is a very, very similar system to what they have at McGregor for a lot of their engine test stands and anything like that. So I mean, it's not like they haven't built anything like it before.
Right. And if only they, actually had a flame diverter of some kind, like they have in the test stand elsewhere. But that's
Well,
just
they
me
might
being
be
bitter.
building one.
Uh-huh.
Might be building a flame trench over at Pad B. There's a lot of indications they're digging at least a trench because they've been putting a ton of sheet piles in, and once those sheet piles are in, they basically dig out in front of those piles and can start to lay up concrete walls and stuff like that. So it's gonna be a while before we see what the shape of the flame trench is gonna be, but it's almost certainly gonna be a flame trench at this rate. Maybe like a bi or even tri-directional flame trench. So it'll look kind of cool once. I hope it's gonna look cool when it's done. So
I do love the bi-directional flame trenches, just saying. But yeah, so they're learning. I mean, the plate, it's working. Gotta give them that. The plate is working now for the last couple flights.
yeah,
But it would be nice to see that flame trench and hopefully lead to, quicker pad turnarounds.
yeah, that was the plate, and that system was really a short-term solution. I don't think that was ever going to be a long-term thing. It's just one of those things. Is SpaceX wanted to try to use as little bit of infrastructure as they could to just launch this thing, and then realize that no, you are actually launching the most powerful rocket ever. You can't do it without deluge. As much as Elon wanted, you need water. Every other rocket has used it. You kind of need it. So I think the only other one that really hasn't used it much was Soyuz, maybe, because Soyuz just shoots into a large pit, basically.
I think we may be close to the test.
Should be close. What's odd is I don't see a methane frost line, but then again, if they're only going to fire
Well,
two engines for a
don't-
few seconds, they don't really need much.
There's not a for a 6-engine static fire. There's also no frost on the methane tank. At least
That-
I don't recall there being any frost on the
Not
methane.
easily visible, at least.
No. Usually
But what I'm seeing right now is that it seems like they're venting. Like you can see there, the frost on the liquid oxygen tank has risen precisely because they're sort of, letting off some of the pressure. So it cools down that tank and it gets frosted over. The level of the liquid oxygen is actually a little bit lower than the frost that you see there. But it's
By the way, apologies for not looking directly at our cameras. It's
Yeah,
no
I'm
offense to
looking-
you. You look beautiful today. You look very handsome, very gorgeous, whichever you prefer. It's because we're also watching on our other screens the different camera
Exactly.
views.
if you want to do it, blame SpaceX. SpaceX is SpaceXing, and they're doing a test, so
Ticker.
And we should also hopefully have sound from the field as well, so when we do get the static fire, hopefully we'll be able to hear it as well.
flaps are venting.
Wait to see if it's 1 engine, 6 engines, what we got. Any other major indicators that we should be looking for right now?
As far as I remember.
Whenever vapor comes out of that flame trench.
Yeah, that's basically going to be the indication. Is all of a sudden you're going to see a
Yeah.
bunch of steam come out, and then maybe some fire, and well, that'll be your indicator that they performed the test. There really isn't much else that they it's going to be indicators at this rate.
Not like there's a vent or something that's an indicator like we're used to with, on the OLM.
Yeah. But Let's see how close we got to that 5:20 time, because we're seconds away from that.
We are at 5:19. At this point, it could be any minute. Your wind.
Yeah, they're still doing some vents here and there. Still no, tank or anything like it. Sometimes whenever there's these long, continued depressed vents, we get very scared. But fortunately, that's not the case. Let's see.
I don't want the dead air, but I don't want to talk over the static fire.
Hey, the problem is we just don't have any indicators on when to. The indicator when to stop talking is it going? It's just patiently waiting.
Yeah, the venting's slowing down a lot now.
Hopefully that means that they are closing off valves, maybe.
It would appear so. There's barely any now.
Come on, Ship 30.
You can do it.
Yeah,
Is that
we're close.
That's a methane tank frost line.
Is there? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A little
bit. Yeah.
Just a tiny bit.
I wonder on this stand if they like load all the liquid oxygen or load most of the liquid oxygen, then they load the methane like right at the end of it. Just
I
right
just
at tail
saw
end.
also venting from the header tanks. That's good as well.
As long as it's not a depress vent, it's good.
Yeah, as long as it's yeah.
They've definitely filled this thing up with propellant. We could get a cross your fingers for like 10-15 second burn. Cross your fingers, Alex. I want to see one. I know this stand can do it. I want them to do a long duration burn.
I haven't crossed mine, but there's a cat in my lap. The flame trench, waiting for the flame trench to see flames in the flame trench.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a
SpaceX.
little bit of frost on the methane tank. Nothing too much, but it's interesting. We didn't see any frost lines on the methane tank for the suborbital pad tests. So yeah.
All indications are that it should be happening very soon. Unless they're putting in one of their
SpaceX is
simulated
trolling
holds.
us. Yeah. Maybe SpaceX is trolling us and they're like, we're gonna hold here.
They
because
know
we
that
can."
the museum show is coming up right after this. They're just trying
Yeah.
to troll us. Which, don't forget, immediately following the flame trench. NSF live from the Intrepid Air and Space Museum in New York with Charlie Blackwell Thompson talking about Artemis.
Up event from the QD, that may indicate done loading.
Maybe it's the vent down sequence,
Maybe.
the usual T-40 seconds.
Yeah, it could
We
be.
have a similar thing.
Yeah. It was a similar thing on the stack.
Yeah. At least on the QD arm, and also on the OLM vent, they have this sort of venting T-40 seconds, clearing out the lines before liftoff. Obviously,
Yeah.
this will hopefully not lift off today, though. It's a static fire test. No Chinese renditions here. We'll see.
And for those asking if it's scrubbed, no, there's no indication yet that it has.
No depressed vent or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, the venting stopping is actually a good sign on this.
Yeah, and they don't. The lock. I don't remember what the LOX recapture setup on this is, but they do not recapture the methane. They'll detank the methane and burn it off. So they don't have a recondenser for the methane here.
Trying to see if I see the drone fly around or not.
They don't have a recondenser here?
No, you see if you see. Oh, it's not in this not in this picture, but it's a little more off to the left. There's a large steel tube that's basically an internal flame, basically burner. Basically, they burn it off rather than recapture it. I don't know
Have
why.
some battery or something. Should be cool if they can use that to just store energy or something and then reuse it. At the very least, it's not burned off or nothing. Might be just my mind. Trying to wait for this static fire test to happen.
Yeah, we all just want it to happen.
You know, it would be funny if it was actually not a static fire test and they did a spin prime test, and we have no idea it happened.
I don't think funny would be the word for that.
I mean, it will be for them watching us, you know, waiting for this.
Yeah. Is that more venting picking up there on the right?
Those are the LOX subcoolers. Come on, Ship 30. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Be better than the previous one that took the stand.
Header tank vents. Just went a little bit.
Be better than Ship 26. Come on, Ship 30.
Funny how you can see from here the cameras, the flaps.
Yeah, they have nice big new housings that look directly at the flap hinge.
Someone asked if no overpressure notice is needed. No, because there's no people to alert about overpressure. This is remote enough that they don't need to close Highway 4. They need to close the road that goes to Massey's, but not Highway 4. No overpressure.
Yeah, the beauty of the new test stand.
Yeah. In fact, the only way that we can know about when things happen at Massey's is when they close the road to Massey's. Like, maybe Jack or Sean go out there and they're like, oh, well, the road is closed. We cannot go to Massey's. It's like, oh, well, if it's closed, then they're probably going to be testing something. Sometimes it's like some silly test tank or something. But sometimes, like today, it is an actual flight vehicle.
See all the people saying, do it, do it,
Do it.
do it.
Is that a... I was trying. It's hard to tell on our camera. There might be a drone up.
I
somewhere in
believe
there.
someone
Maybe.
in chat earlier did mention a drone. I was trying to look for it.
There might be two that are up. It's hard to tell.
I mean, I've seen a bunch of nature's drones, aka birds.
Ooh, I really hope they have drones up and they tweet about the static fire like they did Booster 12. Oh man, can you imagine? Imagine the shots.
Oh,
Please,
cool.
SpaceX, please. They didn't do it for 26 because 26 doesn't deserve it, but Ship 30 deserves it.
It's weird because
I agree.
even the tank farm is completely quiet.
Yeah, so
one little header tank vent.
maybe soon, maybe. SpaceX, fire it. Do it.
Come on, do something.
So much
Any
for that
commentary that comes with the
plus or
blade.
minus 5 minutes.
Well, if it's plus or minus 5, then we're right about 5. Enjoying the wind.
Is it? This feels like the old days of tank watching. You know, the old days of the static fires and flights. It's like, where are we at? How much longer? Because we were still trying to figure out the indications back in the day. That's what it feels like right now. It's a whole
Just
new
need Adrian
stand.
to count cars.
Like, can you imagine how much fun it's going to be? We'll have some indications with the old orbital tank farm. But can you just imagine once they build a new tank farm for Pad B, all the indications we're going to have to learn again? Oh man.
Yeah. All the little tweaks and improvements, and then remember which ones were A, which ones were B.
Right.
Spreadsheets, engage.
Still doing header tank vents every once in a while here. It looks like everything is solid. Nothing's detanking. They're in some kind of hole,
it's actually a fluid, not solid.
You know, Alex, the frost line is solid. We'll go with that. Okay.
If you don't like my puns, you can just, leave the flame trench. In fact, you should, because it's about to get hot.
If you don't like puns, then you shouldn't be here. Or if you enjoy terrible puns, this is also a good place to be. I over the years, I've finally gotten Alex to have puns that sometimes are worse than mine. I don't know how, but I'm very proud.
I learned from the best.
Thank you. I even got Chris B to start making puns every now and then. I think I've seen 1 or 2 out of him. But I would never tell anybody that, don't worry. For those just joining, this is Ship 30. It should be doing something. It is not yet. But we've seen all... There it goes.
Ooh. And there you go. Boom. Well, not boom, but you know.
There we go.
Like
We have static fire of Ship 30.
5 or 6 seconds. I think it was. Oh, 5 or 6 seconds. There you go. That's.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
I counted about 6.
Yeah,
it was about 6 seconds.
So
Yes.
it's a normal static fire. SpaceX, can you do long
Load 6
durations?
engines as well.
Can you do like a solid 10, 15 second static fire one of these days? You know? Like
That was nice.
A big old plume, too, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Now, I guess that looked like 6 to me as well, but we don't have the official number, do we?
I did see 2 ignitions, and it kinda looked like it was all 6 engines.
yeah, it looks like they did a full static fire to probably test that heat shield, see how it would fare. Which I don't really see anything missing at all, so I think we're good. That wasn't missing before, we'll put it that way.
All right. Well, there we go. We have the static fire. It sounds like 6 engines, 6 seconds for Ship 30 on that new test stand there. And, yeah. We are going to be getting replays ready to post on social media, so make sure you follow NASA Spaceflight on X, the Everything app, Facebook, Instagram. We even have a TikTok, I believe. So make sure you check out all the socials, and we'll show you all the different replays that we can as we start pulling and getting those ready.
Also,
Yeah.
Starbase update. It's Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Because we already have transportation closures for tomorrow, actually for tonight, and tomorrow, to be fair, because there's also for the afternoon tomorrow. Maybe Ship 30 comes back to the production site. We'll see. Maybe
We'll
it's
see.
Test Tank 16. We'll see. We'll
I do
cover
need
that,
to thank-
all of that.
I do need to thank some people here really quickly, though. Wilbo Baggins, welcome back, our Falcon family. Thank you. Ryan, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Wait, but you're Ryan. Anyway. Juan, Alex, apparently what you're trying to say earlier is more data, more better. Aramel, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. Wilbo, also gifting another Red Team membership. Telstar gifting another Red Team membership. Rankley gifting a Red Team membership as well, saying, I hope everything goes nominally from here on out. We don't need a catastrophe, as in Jake. Space Pope, bless this test. Thank you very much. Josh Wilson with the tip, tips.nasaspaceflight.com. Ship 26 absolutely deserved an official static fire video. It's what the best ship deserves. I disagree. But anyway, I also thought static fires included hops. No, this is not China. So thank you, everyone, for this. Now, we are not done with streams. There are still 2 more streams today. We have tonight the return to flight for Falcon 9. So stick around for that. We'll be live about an hour before the T0 time. And on top of that, we also have the museum show over at the Intrepid, which is where we are going to send you over to right now, because this is going to be absolutely awesome. You see Alicia on screen, but we'll also have Charlie Blackwell Thompson from the Artemis program. I'm Sawyer Rosenstein, joined here by Ryan, Alex, and Jay, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and all of that. So have a great one, and thank you for joining us in the Flame Trench. Now let's send you up to New York City.
And here we go.
We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange! 145! Oh my god! Oh my god! Decollage. Look at this! Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting